Greetings, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Somadibrata, and today I'll be bringing a speech about online versus offline class. March of last year was when countries all over the world faced a major crisis, the coronavirus pandemic. It struck us terribly and absolutely unexpectedly, and we had to adapt how we usually go about in order to stay safe during these troubling times. Along with our personal efforts, governments also enforced a lot of special rules to keep the disease spread in check, such as mandatory temperature checks when entering public buildings, the supply of antiseptics everywhere, and the 6 feet apart social distancing regulations. A lot of these new normal regulations may be quite shocking and hard for us to implement in our everyday lives, yet with all those new rules, the toughest one to implement would definitely be the mandatory learning from home or online school. It has nearly been a year of students within the country undergoing these online classes, and even though most students have adapted to online schools, there are still many opinionated views surrounding these kind of learning, with alarming issues presented by plenty of people. The first and the biggest issue schools may face would be trying to regulate cheating during examinations. It should come as no surprise that students everywhere are taking advantage of not meeting face-to-face with their teachers to do some things that may be against the rules. Students might be working together with each other, asking help from someone else, or paying someone smart cell to take their test for them. And schools cannot really do anything towards these students, since gathering absolute proof of them cheating isn't easy. And all they can do is speculate and try their best to make it harder for the students to cheat. School officials and teachers are still scratching their heads on ways to handle and reduce cheating through various ways, such as asking students to open their camera or unmuting their microphones during examinations. And while these can prove an added challenge or obstacle to students trying to cheat, there would always be the select few that are able to find a way to bypass and cheat their way out even the trickiest system. Secondly, most students just find it so much harder to focus in online classes. Online classes are held in a dedicated studying space or building, where students would find it easier to switch their more playful mentality to a more serious and focused learning mentality. And the teachers are always there to check when the students are zoning out and bring them back to reality. This is completely different when students are at their distraction-filled homes, with the TV remote just inches away from their hand, phone taunting them on the table, and games within their own computer devices just one click away. It would be harder for these students to resist these temptations. As per before, schools have also been trying their best to regulate their students, yet it's just hard, even borderline impossible. Schools can check their students' stream, nor can they differentiate the faces of students focused with maths or students focused on winning a game. Last but definitely not the least, some classes are just impossible to be learned or even done from home. When we're still doing offline classes, getting access to special facilities was taken for granted. The existence of science lab were just something every student was used to. We had glass beakers, high-end microscopes, dangerous chemicals, and more easily obtainable at our disposals. But when dealing with online classes, we just don't have any of those. Unless our parents are chemists or we live in the chemistry lab, we won't have distillation tubes or even the most common pipettes. And they are quite expensive to buy as well. Not to mention that even if you have all these necessary appliances, dealing and disposing chemical waste from science experiments could be a handful. Not only are science labs out of the question, anything to do with ball sports would also be nearly impossible to do at home. Not every student has a basketball court in the comfort of their own homes. And even if they have a big space as a substitute for a court, there would be glass decorations and windows that can potentially get hit and shattered, which is of course not ideal for anyone. But as with anything debatable, it's not always bad when it comes to online classes. With all those issues said, there are still several benefits that one obtains from taking online classes. The first benefit that online classes provides is accessibility, especially when it comes to money and monetary problems. In every country, there would always be the favorite university that most students yearn to go to. But of course, not every student live near that area. Most people even live hundreds of kilometers away in different cities. This would mean that either every day these students would have to spend more energy to wake up earlier and get these schools in time, or they would have to spend more money to rent living spaces nearby. This would mean that schools would be less accessible to some students, especially those living in more remote areas that are further from good quality schools. With the existence of online schools, it won't be that hard anymore, since students now would be able to simply get off their bed, turn on their computer devices, and that would set them up for the day. No longer would they have to expend their time, energy, and money on reaching the doorsteps of their dream school. Another benefit that online classes present is that it teaches students to be more disciplined and responsible for themselves. Without the ability for the teachers to meet face-to-face and ask their students about their unsubmitted late work or guide each and every student through all their deadlines, they are teaching these students to pull their own weight and be responsible for themselves. Not only that, as mentioned before about distractions, students also have to discipline themselves not to succumb to any of those distractions and fully focus on what the teachers and on what they have to accomplish and be doing at certain times instead of zoning out. Online classes would cut off any teachers that baby their students and force students to be able to regulate everything by themselves. And this would better prepare them for the real world where there wouldn't be a parental figure leading them step by step in their future workplace. Finally, online schools are just generally cleaner and better for the collective health of everyone involved in it. Plenty of students have proven that schools are notorious for spreading sickness, and the reasons are obvious. Schools are buildings absolutely jam-packed, full of people meeting, greeting, and generally hanging around the premises. And especially when most students are sleep-deprived from their latest all-nighter studying or finishing a project, they don't have the best immune systems, do they? This would mean that schools are generally a breeding ground for a lot of fast-spreading diseases such as influenza and colds, where a single sick person could easily transmit and infect dense room full of people. Of course, this risk is completely negated when you are taking online classes, since home would generally be cleaner and have less people in them to easily transmit any form of diseases. And we all know that sneezes don't particularly travel well through computer screens. With all that said, debates on whether or not online schools are better than offline schools are plenty and will always exist. What we also must account the situation that we are currently under, the coronavirus pandemic. The last point mentioned about how schools are a landfill of diseases is the last thing we want to happen now. With how deadly and easily transmissible the coronavirus is, opening schools would be a terrible idea for the teachers or professors that may be older ages of high-risk individuals such as those with asthma or other underlying health problems. So even if you personally prefer online schools than online schools, currently everyone must set aside those beliefs and think about the greater good. Adapting to online schools and these new systems that we are under is the right thing to do, at least until the conditions get better, or preferably until the pandemic is fully over and everything can proceed back to normal. In conclusion, there are several harms that undergoing online schools present, such as easier cheating when taking examinations, students being more susceptible to distractions, or even the non-existence of special equipment needed to partake in some classes. Despite those harms, online schools could also bring some benefits such as mandatory accessibility, better discipline and responsibility for students, and a general better cleanliness than traditional offline schools. Although some people might say that the harms overweight the benefits, whether we like it or not, we must just enjoy this online school right now because of the pandemic that we are currently facing. So we mustn't complain too much and just try our best to adapt and do what we can with this new system. And that's all for today. Thank you very much.